Welcome to Chapter 21, The Conceptual Image. This is where the illustrator who was interpreting a writer's text gave way to the graphic imagist making a statement. This new breed of designer was often concerned with the total design of the space and the integration of word and image. To begin this chapter, I want you to tell me, what does the conceptual image convey? We will begin our discussion with the work of Italian designer Armando Testa. He used highly abstract combinations to convey the meaning of the subject. His ads for Pirelli tires had an international impact on graphic design. He used the vocabulary of surrealism by combining the tire with easily recognized symbols. In this poster, the strength of the bull elephant is conveyed as an attribute of the tires. Poland came out of World War II devastated. Graphic design almost ceased to exist, like many other aspects of the Polish culture. In the communist post-war Poland, the clients were state-controlled institutions and industry. So in Poland, the poster played a unique role in the cultural life of the nation. I want you to tell me, what was that role? Tadeusz Trepkowski was an early poster artist after the war. He expressed the tragic memories and dreams for the future that were deep within the national consciousness. He reduced words and imagery until the content was at its simplest form. In this famous anti-war poster, he used few shapes to symbolize the city destroyed by bombs with the statement, "No." Henryk Tomaszewski became the spiritual head of Polish graphic design after Trepkowski's untimely death. He was a professor at the Warsaw Academy of Fine Arts. Tomaszewski's posters led the Polish graphic design toward colorful and artistic expression, as seen in this poster for the Olympic Games in London, and also in this poster for the play Marie and Napoleon in 1964. The next major poster trend began in the 1960s. A darker, more somber side of the national consciousness was shown. Frank Starowiecki was the first graphic designer to embrace this style. In this style for the Warsaw Drama Theater 1962, a cube drawn in perspective transforms the flat page into a deep perspective where the images seem to float above it. I want you to describe the look of the Polish posters in the 1960s using this poster as an example. Jan Lenica is another artist who began to use this surrealist approach. He used more stylized contour lines and divided his posters into colorful zones, as seen in these two images here. I want you to tell me, what modern art movement do you think was an influence for Lenica? Roman Cieślewicz was another poster artist who was exiled and lived in Paris since the 1960s. He used the poster to express very complicated ideas in a metaphysical way. His techniques included montage, collage, and halftoning. In 1980, shortages in food, electricity, and housing led to the formation of an illegal solidarity labor union. Jerzy Januszewski designed this famous logo, which became an international symbol of struggle against oppression. What is the symbolism behind this world-famous logo? As a result of government censorship during Poland's social unrest, the country's posters frequently addressed issues that reached beyond national borders rather than directly confronting internal political struggles. An example of this concept is seen in this poster by Marian Nowinski. In this Polish poster, an international view of censorship is tackled. Nowinski laments over censorship and the suppression of Chilean poet Pablo Neruda, whose works were banned and burned by the Pinochet regime. Side note, guys, if you ever want to impress a girl with romantic poetry, Pablo Neruda is the poet for you. In 1971, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Moving on from the Polish conceptual image, we come to the American conceptual image. New York was where a group of young graphic artists got together and began to develop a more conceptual approach to illustration. They formed the Push Pin Studio in 1954. I want you to tell me who were the principal artists that formed this studio. Milton Glaser was one of them. Their philosophies and personal ideals were globally influential. They used art and graphic history as a source of information and often reinvented the source in new ways. Here are a few examples of Glaser's. Glaser was hard to categorize as an artist because he was always reinventing himself. In this first image, this is a record album cover for The Sound of Harlem done in 1964. And this next image, which is timeless and very famous of Bob Dylan, illustrates this contour line and flat color period. This was a poster he did for a Dada and Surrealism exhibition poster. The smaller table isolates the word real within the longer world surrealism. And lastly, this is his famous Art Is Whatever poster, done in 1996. Suggesting a painting by Magritte, visual and verbal meanings are explored by manifesting a hat as a photograph, a shadow, a word, a pictograph, and a written definition. Seymour Fast was another principal designer with the Pushpin Studio. Traces of children's art, primitive art, folk art, woodcuts, and comics appear in his design. In this album cover for the Threepenny Opera, he demonstrates his ability to take many art forms and blend them together successfully. And in this anti-war poster, he takes a common saying and advertises it and gives it new life. In this poster for a Judy Garland concert, he uses color to express the resonance of her singing. And both Fast and Glaser developed a number of novelty typefaces as shown here. The term push-pin style became used for the studio's work. Why was the style of the studio so successful? CBS Records was able to operate at the forefront of the graphic interpretation of music. Both music and graphic design share a similar language. John Berg was the art director at CBS Records who made a significant contribution to the conceptual image in terms of album design. Here's an example in this cover for the Byrds' Birdmania. And here's another one for the New York Philharmonic's William Tell album, where he replaced complex visual ideals with a simple graphic representation of the subject. The next type of poster we're going to talk about is a psychedelic poster, a uniquely American genre. The first wave of poster culture came from the hippie subculture of San Francisco. This particular poster was done by Wes Wilson. This other one by Victor McCosco. Both of these gentlemen were main artists involved in the psychedelic poster movement. These posters were generally considered anti-establishment and dealt with values of rock music, non-traditional values, and psychedelic drugs. Hence, the name psychedelic posters. This graphic movement was inspired by Art Nouveau, pop culture, and pop art. I want you to tell me, what did the posters of the 1960s depict? And I just gave you a clue. But more importantly, how were the posters of this era and genre different from other contemporary poster art? Our next conceptual image discussion leads us back to Europe, where during the 1960s and into the 1990s, a poetic approach to graphic design developed. I want you to tell me, why was the European approach to poster design during this period labeled poetic? Gunther Kaiser was a master of this movement. He was able to invent unexpected visual content to solve communication problems. Some of his imagery was convincingly realistic. In this poster from the Deep South, a concert announcement becomes a powerful symbol of the longing for freedom and justice contained in the music through the use of the dove and the typographic treatment. And in another of his designs, this poster for the Frankfurt Jazz Festival shows the trunk of a tree as a horn with a new branch symbolically growing out of it standing for the annual event. German Gunther Rambo was one of the most innovative image makers of the late 20th century. In his designs, photographs are manipulated, montaged, and airbrushed. Everyday images are combined to create a surrealistic statement, as in this series of posters for a book publisher. Rambo's images are almost magic in their ability to create a new reality, and all of this was done without the aid of Photoshop. Imagine that. So I want you to examine each book image here and tell me what that image is communicating about its subject. Another European designer, Frenchman Robert Messiaen, delighted graphic design communities with his experimental typography. These figures show a pictorial directness in the tradition of comic books with an expressive typography that reminds me of futurist and Dada poetry. He aimed for communication more than the founders of the aforementioned practitioners of those modern art movements did. I think they're just fun to look at. In 1970, three young artists in the social tradition of Henryk Tomaszewski opened a studio in Paris called the Grappus Studio. Pierre Bernard, Francois Mihy, and Gerard-Paul Clavel were the artists involved. Here's an example of their work where major political issues were addressed, such as international controversy over nuclear missiles in Europe. Its typographic icon became a symbol for the political position against this and was applied to bumper stickers, buttons, street displays, and posters. For 20 years, they provided inspiration to graphic students all over the world with their idealistic principles and their highly distinctive form of image making. I want you to tell me, how did the designers involved with Grappus go about solving a design problem? And I want you to look into your textbook for this answer. And what was the design of the studio motivated by? Their shocking imagery and dynamic informality of spatial organization with casual graffiti-like lettering was copied by advertising. You should look up some of the other imagery done by the studio on the web. But looking at this particular exhibition poster done in 1982, I want you to tell me, what graphic symbols can you identify from this poster? The third world poster is the last conceptual image category we're going to discuss. The third world is defined by the book as the emerging nations of Latin America, Asia, and Africa during the post-World War II era. Once again, the poster became a powerful tool, where ideas became weapons, and the poster was the vehicle to wield them. Cuba became a major center for poster design after Castro defeated Batista in 1959. Under Castro, the arts did flourish for a short time, however, within very strict constraints. Raul Martinez was a leading Cuban graphic designer. This poster honoring the Cuban people shows figures in bright colors in almost a comic book style. In this other poster of the fallen revolutionary hero Ernesto Che Guevara by Elena Serrano, his image has been drawn in light and dark shadow planes like high contrast photography. This trademark is very famous and becomes the everyman. He was converted into a mythic hero who sacrificed his life so that others could live, but in reality he was really a murderous butcher. The complex social, political, and cultural ideas and emotions expressed by these artists were more effectively done using iconic and symbolic imagery. I want you to tell me, what constituencies did the third world posters address, and what was the impact of these posters on those specific constituencies? So in conclusion, the importance of conceptual images in the last part of the 20th century developed because of many factors. Social, cultural, and political issues were, in my opinion, the most powerful catalysts for poster development and the development of the need to effectively communicate.